Hey y'all, look at us. We on time tonight. My guests are on time. They on point tonight. So I hope y'all ready because we have two guests. And y'all know when they on time, y'all know it's always a good live. But I'm gonna give them the opportunity to go ahead and introduce themselves. Ms. Lear, you can introduce yourself first and let them know what family member is incarcerated.
Okay. My name's Lyric, and my 25-year-old son is incarcerated, and also my husband. My son has been incarcerated for 8 years now. He got 22 years, so he has, I don't know, a while to go. My
Okay.
husband has
Okay.
served. He'll probably be home this year.
Okay. And Miss C, you can introduce yourself as well.
Yes, my name is Miss C, and my husband was incarcerated over about 5 years ago, and he's out now, but it devastated the whole family. So I guess we'll get into a little bit of that.
Okay, definitely. Okay. So Miss Lyric, um, I'm assuming that you met your husband before his incarceration, right?
Yeah, I've known him 20 years, but I kind of lost. It's weird how it happened. My son 2 years ago called me and said, "You'll never guess who I'm in here with," and that's just kind of how it happened. They kind of recognized each other one day, and I hadn't seen him in probably almost 20 years, and so just so happened that him and my son have been hanging out for a little while in the yard, and then I guess my son had threw some pictures that had his name written on the back, and nobody in there really knows each other by name. They have nicknames, So when the picture fell over the run, it went under my husband's door, and he picked it
Mm-hmm.
up like, "Hey, somebody lost their pictures." And when he flipped it over, he saw the name, and he was like, "There's no way." And so he confronted my son the next day and was like, "Do you have a mom?" And he gave him my name, and he was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Man," tells him who he is. And so when my son called me, we had been looking for this guy for probably, for the whole entire time we hadn't seen him. We'd been looking for him, but that was back in the MySpace days. So
Oh
we couldn't
wow.
find him on Facebook. Could never find him anywhere. And nobody knew what happened to him. And ended up, when he was 22, he ended up getting 15 years. So he'd been there a
Wow.
long time. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's kind of how it happened. We just kind of started talking, and one thing led to another, and here we are a couple years later.
Oh
So
wow. That's interesting. Well, at least you already knew him before he was there.
yeah,
So did y'all
definitely.
actually like do the ceremony while he's been incarcerated?
Yeah, we did that in September. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now is your husband and your son, are they still on the same yard together now?
No, my son, they're actually about 3 hours apart now. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So what are your if you don't mind sharing, what are the charges for your husband and your son?
So my son had 2 counts of aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon. And
Okay.
one of the charges he did do, the other charge he took for somebody that he knows. So,
Hmm.
and my husband, same thing, was aggravated robbery.
Okay. Okay. So was there ever a time that you did visitation at the same institution for both of them together before they went to different
No,
yards?
no, because my son he's usually in a lot of trouble always. So he's usually G5, which is where you can only get a class visit type thing. And sometimes you can't get a visit at all. So it just depends
Right.
on what he's gotten on at the time. But now I go and I take a weekend out of every month. I go and see my son, and then I drive the 3 hours down to see my husband the next day. So,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, Miss C. What about your husband?
Well, my husband is presently out now, but he was actually I'll go back. My husband was military. So he basically had served almost 22 years, and we thought we had it all together. But my husband had always been a drinker. So he we'd already purchased us a 4-bedroom home, paid for our cars and everything, and thought we had all of the kids out. We have 5 kids, all of them grown and gone. So it's more like an empty nester. So we were straight. But anyway, one day he got off work. He decided to celebrate with his guys on the base, and he got totally smashed. And he was coming home, and he flipped the car over. Thank God he didn't get killed, but he actually went into a ditch, and someone had to pull him out of the ditch. But they put him, because this was not his first DUI that he had. So they actually, it all, to me, when I look back on it, I always say God had his hand in it all along, because my husband actually was out of the Navy when this happened. So everything pertaining to his pay and everything was already, moving forward, already in place for me. So, when he went to jail, when he went to jail, they actually only sentenced him to a year in jail. Well, that's a long time if you've never been in jail. And it was devastating for me because I had never been without him. He was always there. So they gave him 1 year in jail. Basically, after that, everything started going downhill as far as we lost. Well, we didn't lose the house. I sold the house probably a couple of months before it went into foreclosure, so we wouldn't lose the certificate on the house from the Navy. So after that, we lost one. Well, he total lost the car that we were actually finished paying for. So the one that had car notes on it, we ended up still having that one. But anyway, after that, I sold the house. I ended up moving into a apartment, which I had never lived in before. I've always lived in a home. But anyway, everything was really, really devastating even though the kids were adults. They took it hard because they had never seen their father in jail before. So when I used to get visitation, right, it was like, it did something to me because I had never went to jail to see anybody. And I had never wanted to go to jail to see anybody. But when I went to jail to see him, it just broke me down, because here's a man that I, love dearly and has spent almost 20 years with. He's sitting behind a glass. And my husband is not a dumb guy. He's a very intelligent guy, but he just had this alcohol problem. But he was behind this glass, and then one day when I went there, he had his hair braided. I said, "Oh hell no, I'm sorry." I'm like, then you had to sit between somebody's legs to do that. I was like, "Oh my God!" But it was a lot. It took me through a lot of things, mine, and I had to stay strong because my kids would come over and visit, and they would look at me for strength. So I just put everything on the back burner pertaining to me and how I felt, just to stay strong and appear strong for them.
Right.
So either way, we went through it. We went through it all. We got through it. I had to pray about it and ask God, should I stay with him or should I leave? Because I had nothing left in the city that we were in but us, me and him. But I prayed about it and asked God, should I stay or should I leave? Because everybody is saying, hey, leave. He has an ongoing problem. This was ongoing. My kids never saw it, but it was ongoing, and I knew it. Even while he was in the military, it was ongoing. So I just had to pray and ask God, what should I do? Should I stay or should I leave? Because I have nothing to lose. And when I prayed that night about it and asked God, what should I do? He said, weigh the odds on what type of man he is. If the good outweighs the bad, then you stay. If the bad outweighs the good, then you leave. And my husband is a good father, good husband, everything. I don't have to want for anything. So that answered my question. I ended up staying.
Okay. So were you employed during this time, or were you like financially dependent upon your husband?
No, I was employed. Actually, like I said, my husband is a good provider. He's a good husband. He's a good supporter. Actually, he helped me open up a home health care service. That's what I
Okay.
do. So he helped me open it up. He's good with money. So he was actually my financial advisor. He used to do my payroll. He did all of that. So those are a lot of the things that I was doing. So I could actually basically take care of myself. All I had to do was transfer the business to another state, and I would still be financially able. But he was the one that was my backbone, pushing me forward to help me open this business. So other than that, he after I ended up staying there, that was my first time being alone. I was alone, and it was nothing there but me and my thoughts, but I kept myself busy to try and not think of the man that I love is behind bars. And I cringed every time I went to visit him because I didn't like that place. I felt like when I went there to see him, how
Mm-hmm.
they checked me. You
Right.
got somebody checking you. I mean, I felt like I was in jail.
Right. Right.
It degraded me. It made me feel degraded. And it was like all these people around me was almost like they were accustomed to doing that. And I wasn't. And it was like I told him I wasn't coming back because I didn't like it anymore. I said, we'll talk over the phone, but I'm not having anybody petting on me and all that stuff. I said,
Right.
so, call me, and we call me once a week because that's when they were charging, for phone calls. And I said, I'm not paying this bill. Just call me once a week or whatever. But I stayed, and he was a different person when he got out. It was almost I had to relearn my husband all over again. But
Oh,
my husband loves the Lord too. He does too. He come from a spiritual background as well. So, I told him the only way I can get to know you is we have to pray every day because I don't know this guy here. And take those cornrows out of your head. I said that's not going to work for me. So
oh my
I
goodness.
thought they had what you call them when they change you over to prison. They they change you over to who they are. But he got that straight. But we got back on the right track, and actually we ended up buying another home, which I'm here now. We've been here over 10 years. We bought another car. Both of our cars are paid for. So the good did outweigh the bad, and
Okay.
he is a good man. We've been married now 39 years.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, so he's a good man.
Okay. I think this question is for you, Miss Lyric. Had your son been in trouble a lot before he was sent to prison?
Yeah, he had. It really started. I was in a domestic violence situation when he was like 10 years old. So he was really my protector. So
Mhm.
we had a lot of trauma from that. Plus, the school, he was a really hyper kid. So the school wouldn't deal with him unless you took him to a doctor and put him on meds.
Mhm.
So I did that because I was young. I didn't know any better. So I put him on ADHD medication, which was like Adderall. Well, I didn't know at the time that Adderall is just, a form of speed. And when it started affecting him badly, like he would crash off of it in the end of the day and just freak out, have a fit, just, have an emotional breakdown basically. And so I took him off of it. And when I took him off of it, the doctors tried to come after me for medical neglect for not giving it to him.
Mhm.
And I didn't that he was so addicted to it that he started going out in the street trying to find stuff to, replace it.
Right.
And that's where it started. And then the domestic violence situation ended. He had went to live with his father. But by then the damage was already done. It was, he was always having to protect me with knives, and it was just a bad situation. So, and I was really young when I was only 19 when I had him. So, we just kind of grew up together, and
Mhm.
it was just a sad situation. So I know my part. I know I played a huge part in him going to prison because he had so many problems with the domestic violence, and then his father wasn't around for most of his life, and so it was just a bad situation. So he ended up there. He ended up the
Okay.
first charge that he got into a fight with. he was already upset. He was upset that day, and some guy told him to pull his pants up. And I don't think he realized how old the man was. The man didn't look his age. So him and the man get into a big fist fight, basically. My son took his wallet and threw it. But he also had a gun on him. So at the same time, so that's where they charged him with the aggravated robbery. He didn't take anything out of the wallet, but it didn't matter because that's what he stripped the guy of his wallet. So, and that he took another charge for somebody he cared about, and he wouldn't snitch on them, so he took it. So that's basically how he ended up there.
Okay, so due to him, I guess, having to always, protect you and have your back when you were in these, this abusive relationship, like, do you ever blame yourself, or have you ever blamed yourself for him going to prison?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And like I said, I take responsibility for my part. I most definitely. Now, he did what he did. And he knows that he should have done what he did. But I know that what I went through and put him through played a huge role in where he ended up.
Mm-hmm.
And Texas is one of those states. They just don't play. If you have a gun in your hand when you do anything wrong, you're going to prison for 20 years at least, And so, yeah, it was just, I definitely blame myself all the time. And I have friends that tell me, oh, you can't blame yourself. Well, I think that's stupid because I know what went wrong. I know,
right.
I know exactly what happened, and they don't. So I definitely feel guilty about it all the time.
Right. Yeah. Dan said, how are you coping with losing a loved one to the system? And then technically, you have two, even though your husband was already there, but how do you cope with that? Because you have your husband there and you have your son there.
It's really hard. The first 2 years, I don't think I even got out of bed. I had just started a company. I almost lost my company because of it. I was just in a super depressive state. And I have a son that's 4 years younger than him. And basically he helped me out of it. I still had to take care of him. He was still young. Excuse me. He was I think he was 13 when he went to prison. So, it took me a long time to not get over it, but be able to function with it, because it's really hard, especially when you know that a lot of it is your fault. Then it really takes a toll on your mind and your mental capacity. So it took me a long time to function well with it. Right. Now it's a lot better. So it's very different seeing my son compared to seeing my husband. Because my son stays in a lot of trouble just because that's just how he is. And so when they bring my son out, they bring him out in shackles head to toe. And they, a little bitty box, and he has to put his hands, through the little hole in the box to get uncuffed. And, so it's a big difference. And I go see my husband, we can get contact visits, and there's, I don't see him in handcuffs or being manhandled. My son, I do. And my son, he gets into it with guards sometimes, racist guards, because Texas is just kind of like that, And so he catches a lot of that, a lot of racism, and he fights back and doesn't realize he shouldn't fight back, that he's not going to win that fight. And so the last visit that I went was extremely hard for me. I mean, it was so devastating for me because he was beat up really bad, and it was guards that did it. And so basically him and a guard have been going at it, having words, several times over the last few years. And the guard, I guess, got tired of whatever and told him, I'm going to come in, I'm going to take my stuff off. I'm coming in there. We're going to scrap. And he wasn't ready for my son. And my son knocked him unconscious. And the goon squad came, handcuffed him, took him to a closet and just beat the living shit out of him, handcuffed. They pepper sprayed him, left him in there. It was bad. It was really bad. I didn't see him for a couple of months. I saw that 2 months later effects of what they had done. And it was brutal. I try really hard not to get emotional in front of him because it's going to make him miserable. He's going to go back to his cell and cry too. It's not a good situation, but that day was I couldn't help it. It was horrible. It was so horrible. So,
and what I've noticed with when I go, to investigate the situations like that, some of the inmates, they won't, even though, we know 100% the officer was dead wrong, the inmate will not say anything because it's just like they live by, okay, well, I ain't no snitch, so I ain't gonna say nothing. I'll be all right. I just do my time. And, and I guess they have this distrust for even me, you know what I'm saying? Because in their minds, she's an investigator, so she's going to go with whatever they said, but that's not always the case. And it's real unfortunate because I can only imagine how he looked with you seeing him 2 months after he had already been beat, right? So when you go to visit him, like what's the thoughts in your head? What's the feeling that you have knowing that you can't physically touch him? Because when I did work visitation and having to bring the inmate like fully restrained and like the parents are like, well, I can't touch him for a minute. Can't, get him on the other side of the glass. Just like, no, you can't touch him. I mean, literally from head to toe, they're shackled. What feeling do you have like as a mother seeing your son and knowing that you can't even hug him?
It's gut wrenching. It's disturbing. Yeah. It's hard. I have not physically given my son a hug in 6 years. And I don't know if he'll be able to. He's been in like solitary confinement on and off for 5 years. And so he doesn't get, like I said, he doesn't get any physical contact whatsoever. But the very first time that I saw my son was almost a year and a half after he'd gone in, by the time they transfer him to different units. And my young would go to see him. And I think that was the most devastated I've been because my son went to prison a child. And that day when I walked in to see him, he come around the corner and he was a grown man. And it shook my soul. Like I'm almost tearing up thinking about it because it's devastating to, he literally went to prison 2 weeks after his 18th birthday. Or he was arrested 2 weeks after his 18th birthday. So that was very, very hard because he was just a kid. He didn't, he didn't realize that what he was doing was going to send him to prison for 22 years. He had no idea.
Right. And I don't care how light complected your skin is, you are a minority. And so they show you no mercy. Absolutely no mercy. Like I tell my son all the time, they're not going to show you no mercy because your ID says that you are a Black male. Not going to show you no mercy. So
is he still on medication now?
No, he's not on medication now. I'd come to find out years later, they were treating him for the wrong thing. They were treating him for ADHD, and he's actually bipolar. So you can't treat that, with ADHD medication. It's going to make it worse, and it'll make you an addict. And it basically, it did. Now he's it's been 8 years now, so he's doing a lot better, and he's found other ways to cope with things, but he's not on medication now. And in prison, you don't want to take psych pills. That's the worst thing you can do. If anybody finds out you're taking, you know how it is. It's not a good look. So he will not take anything to help him because of the situation he's in. I think if he was home, he might see a doctor and actually get help for what's wrong, But he has a lot of PTSD from what we went through, so that affects him pretty bad. So yeah, it's pretty bad.
So what has your Mother's Days been like?
They suck. They suck. I usually don't get to go see him on Mother's Day, but it usually just kind of falls on the wrong time where he, like right now he can't visits. And so yeah, Mother's Day is rough. But my youngest son, he tries to really do it big for me on Mother's Day to make up for it. So that's a good thing. So he's super sweet like that.
So are your kids, are they opposites? Like, do your younger son, does he ever get into any trouble?
No, they are like day and night. My youngest son, he works and takes care of his girlfriend, and he's on his own. He's doing really good. They were always totally different. They have they have different fathers, and so each of their fathers are different too. One's my father's really calm. My other son's father, I met him 2 weeks out of prison, so he has the same condition my son does. He's bipolar as well. So
okay. Pink said, when did you realize that your domestic violence relationship was causing trauma to your son?
I really knew the first time that it happened, the first time that my ex liked to do sexual stuff to me. He was kind of brutal. Like, my son would happen to walk in, hear me screaming, and come in with knives and try to protect me. But it would, you know, what was happening when he walked in was so traumatic to him. And so I knew him the very first time that it happened. We got to get away from him. But we would literally run from this guy. We would move to the other side of town in somebody else's name in their apartment, and he would find us. So he was a stalker. It was bad. I couldn't get away from him. It took me 2 years. And the last day that I got away from him, he had kidnapped me for 3 days. And I mean, I was almost dead by the time I got away. So it was a bad situation. So I knew immediately that it was going to cause trauma. I don't think that I realized how much trauma it caused him until later on. I knew it was bad. Like I said, I knew it was bad. But I wish I would have gotten him more help before it got to this point, you know. I really didn't know how to get him help, you know. I didn't know what to do. He wouldn't really talk to anybody about it. He would kind of blow it off and, oh, that didn't affect me. That didn't bother me. And, you know, it did. And now that he's older, he's 25 now, and we can have conversations about it now, and he can tell the truth and be like, yeah, it messed me up bad.
Right. Ms. Nini said, with your son unwilling to take meds, how is he able to cope with his diagnosis? It seems like medication would help him so much. So how does he cope with it?
You know, he does. My son likes to rap and sing. So he does a lot of music in there. He has sent me amazing music. It's crazy. So music is really how he copes with everything. He turns everything into a, so yeah.
Okay. Miss C, when your husband was incarcerated, did y'all miss your anniversary, or did he get out in time for your anniversary?
Well, we missed one with one of them, but the rest of them, I mean, he only served a year.
Right.
But like I said, that was brand new for both of us. He had never been in trouble before or anything like that, but he just good. The one thing I said about the military, they have no problem with you drinking, but they do have a problem with drugs. But you can drink all day. But they I think he went in with an alcoholic problem, but when he got there, you know, it enhanced. We married after he was like 3 years. Had only been in for 3 years, but you know, he and I actually met at a club. But I drank, you know, responsibly. But I didn't realize that he was drinking because he had to drink. I didn't pick up on that until, you know, we got way into our marriage. But still, you know, like I said, they are in, you know, every time they have a meeting or whatever in the military, it's alcohol involved. So that was not any help to him, you know, for him. But either way, you know, it all worked itself out in the end.
So during your marriage, I guess when you noticed that he had an issue with alcohol, like, did you ever try to get him any help or suggest that he received any help for his alcoholism?
Well, one of the things with the military is one of his issues got him involved with some of the people on the base. You know, he was actually on the base when it happened. They put him in a treatment program. They have lots of programs for the military, but he just, you know, he had got so used to being manipulative to them. He knew how that program went, and lots of guys in there know how the program go. You go there, you know, play the role or whatever, and next thing you know, they give you, you know, your sheet to go back to work. So that's how that went. But either way, I had to go. In the end, I went myself to, you know, outside treatment, you know, as far as being his wife. And knowing that I felt like I had an issue as well, you know, for dealing with him. And I asked the adult children to go with me, you know, because it affected them, not the way that it affected me, but it affected them another way, because they never knew their father for being in jail.
Right.
But, he was upset about that. That hurt him too. that his children, they ended up coming to see him, but he was embarrassed for them coming to see him because he's been the head of our home, and they look up to him,
Mm-hmm.
but they kind of put the strong side on the outside to go and see him because they still love their father. So after that, when he came back home, I told them, sit and talk with him, let him know how you feel, and move on. Don't do like I did, just hold it in and not tell him how you really feel, because drinking is an addiction, but at the same time, you can get help for it. So
Right,
it's a
right.
choice as well.
Okay. Ms. Nini said, how is the bond with your children and your husband now that he's home?
They love their father to death. It's been over 5 or 6 years. So they treat him the same. They treat him, they pretty much look past everything that has happened. He thought he was a disappointment to them. I think he held on to it longer than we did. But
Okay.
we knew the good side of him, but we knew now that he got that addiction taken care of. I think that year in jail, it shook him up so bad, and it was so many different things that went on in jail. I think some of the things he probably didn't tell me, but
Mm-hmm.
some of the things, I think whatever it was, my husband hasn't drank since. And so,
Okay.
I think once we got that addiction, and looking back too, just like she was saying, sometime when your children experience some of the things that you go through as parents, as far as in abusive relationships, it's almost like a teaching moment for you to teach. You're teaching your children this is acceptable, and
Right.
Exactly.
you're teaching them, because I have a friend too that her husband was abusive and she accepted the abuse. So her family was abusive, her parents were abusive, and her husband's parents were abusive. So he learned how to beat a woman, and she learned how to receive the beating.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Yeah.
stems all the way back. Sometimes people are not the way they are for no reason. Something happened. And as you can see, when you go to court, they go all the way back in your background to say,
Mm-hmm.
well, when they're trying to build a defense against you or against the other person, they say, well, when she was a child, this happened and that happened, because it's known that whatever they're going through, it happened. Something developed that situation for them to be the way that they are. And I think my husband's father was an alcoholic.
Okay.
So it was a learned behavior that he went through. But I'm a witness that that behavior, if that you are willing to, it can be unlearned. You
Mm-hmm.
have to just have the desire, even after you become an adult. You can unlearn what you've learned. You just gotta want to do it. It can be
Right.
done. You know.
That's true.
Well, that's a good point. Ms. Lyric, were any of your parents like abusive to each other?
Yeah, I was a foster kid. My father was a pedophile, and I
Okay.
last time I saw him I was like 14. My
Mm-hmm.
mother was a very violent drunk, and
Mm.
so I was in foster care half of my childhood. So were my three brothers.
Oh,
So
wow.
to be honest, I never really had and that's where I messed up a lot with my oldest son. My youngest son didn't get the version of me that my oldest son got, because
Mm-hmm.
as you get older, you grow and you learn what you did wrong. And with my son, it was very clear to me the mistakes that I made, so I fixed them with my youngest son, which is
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate for my oldest, but it is what it is. You learn to do better, and yeah, so that's it. But
That's definitely true, because we know that
Yeah.
parenting does not come with a handbook, especially when you're a young mother. So
yeah,
as your kids get older and you have another one, you definitely do. I mean, at least any person in their right mind, they definitely going to try to make sure that they at least make the situation better for the next child up. Um,
exactly.
Now, as
Yeah.
far as with your husband, you get contact visits with him, but what has that been like since you've never have had your husband actually home with you yet?
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, luckily we knew each other. I mean, we were roommates before a long, 20 years ago, so we know each other pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's difficult. It's very difficult. it's been a year and a half now waiting, almost 2 years. So, and he should be home in October. So hopefully I won't have to wait too much more. But yeah, it's been difficult.
So are you financially supporting both your husband and your son?
No, my husband financially supports himself. He already had several $1,000s saved up before I ever came along. And my son, basically, the person that he took a charge for takes care of him.
Okay.
So
Well, I mean, that's the least they could do.
Yeah.
That's the least they can do.
Yeah.
So what is your visitation like when you go to see your husband and your son? Because was this the first time that you ever like visited a prison with your husband and your son, or had you ever visited a prison before, if anything else?
I had visited a prison when I was when I was a teenager. I went with a neighbor to go see somebody. I can't remember who. I, like I said, I was in foster care. My family was pretty dysfunctional, so it's not like I was had never been around jail or prison or anything. So it wasn't that difficult for me. It was something I already was comfortable with, I think, just the way I grew up. So, but my husband's visits are easy. My son's are not. It's because it's your son. You're leaving your heart. You leave. So it's really difficult. With my husband, and he's older, so my husband can handle a little bit more than my son can too. I mean, my son's really tough, but I think he thinks he's tougher than he is sometimes. He won't ask for help, type thing. So it's a lot different.
Do you have a relationship with his family?
With my husband's family, to be honest, he doesn't really have family. He has a grandmother, and I stay in contact with her. His mother, he had a lot of problems growing up because his mother was a crackhead and a bad addiction, and she would just move out of an apartment while he was at school, and he'd come home and nobody would be there, and the apartment would be gone. It was locked up. He couldn't get in. And so he would just kind of surf from people. And that started at 12. And he hadn't even seen his mother a few years before he went to jail. And she died in 2016. So she died in prison. And he does not have a relationship with his father. So, and that's very sad.
Yeah, that's sad.
I don't think he's ever had a relationship with him. So we're pretty much the only family he has. And
So when he comes home in October, because sometimes when people when they're incarcerated, they talk one way, but when they come home, sometimes they're a different person than the person that they were while you were communicating with them in prison. If he comes home and he's not the person who he's been to you while y'all have been married, would you stay, or would you end the relationship, end the marriage?
Well, it depends. If he's going to be a horrible person, then yeah, I would definitely end it. But, I know just from being, my son being in prison for 8 years, it's not going to be easy when he comes home, when my husband comes home, because he's been there a long time. He's been there since he was a kid, and so he grew up in prison. He's going to have to relearn everything. So, I would definitely stick it out if he's a good person. If he comes home and is a bad person, that's something totally different, But knowing him all these years, I know how things are going to go. I think I know how things are going to go.
Right.
Just know him. Had I never met him, had I just met him in prison, I probably would say, I don't know the answer to that. But I just know him, and I know that I think he'll do the right thing. He's a good guy.
Okay. Well, before we end the live, do either of you ladies have any advice or anything that y'all would like to share with the viewers that's watching right now? So I know Miss T says she got to go take her nap, and I told her I wasn't gonna hold her too long.
I know I want to say this too. I don't know if I can say that, but this was one of the things I noticed. I saw about me. I was so precautious because I was having another person that I didn't know come home. Even we were separated for 1 year, but it was just something about me that I don't like jails. I don't like prisons. It's just something about me that it just, I don't know. It's just give me the creeps. But
Yeah.
I made I made my husband for the first 6 months that he was home wear a condom. I did not
Mm.
know. I wasn't taking any chances. He said, "No, nothing. I don't care." I said, "No, I don't know what's going on in those places. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know if you did something you wouldn't tell me anyway. But I have to protect myself. And plus, I work in healthcare, and I'm
Uh-huh.
avid. I'm an advocate of staying clean and making sure that I'm taken care of. And I mean, even if I didn't know, I would know on my own that whatever happened, I'm not. After 6 months, I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'm okay after
Uh-huh.
that. But he was fine with it. He said whatever you needed to do to make you feel comfortable, because he felt so guilty about what I was doing. But I held down the fort, and I kept the bills going. I kept the
Mm-hmm.
car payment. I kept everything going while he was gone. So he felt like, hey, whatever you need me to do, then I'll
Mm-hmm.
do that. But that was and I used to keep watching him at the side of my eye, because this was somebody I had to relearn.
Right. Miss C,
Yeah,
you said you wasn't playing that. You was not having it.
I wasn't having it. I was not having nothing. I don't know what you picked up down there. I said, no way. So other than that, mm-mm.
Miss C,
But
what you thought? You thought when he had those braids, he got turned out or something?
I don't know what happened. I don't know. I felt like this. When I get my hair braided, if my kids come over and do my hair, and,
Uh-huh.
and we're sitting in the living room or whatever, I figure like jail did not have any couches now, or chairs or dining room tables. You got to sit between somebody's legs. I said, "What did you do? What did you do? What did he charge you?" I was really want to know. He
Right.
said, I had one night he let me ask him anything I wanted to. And so I said, "Did anybody try to get at you?" He said, "What are you saying?" I say, "I'm just asking. You said I could ask anything." I say,
Right.
"I'm just asking." I say, because I mean, some of those people like down there, they can't do without. So, and you brand new, you fresh, you never been to jail. They can tell if you ever been to jail, and you're handsome, you're nice looking. I don't know. He said, "No, no." I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, how did you get your hair braided?" Back to that. No, but they shook my husband up. They shook him up because my husband, I mean, to tell you, when he got out of jail, he couldn't drive for like 2 years. And
Mm-hmm.
so I took him everywhere he had to go, and I had to drive. He didn't like that either. But right around the corner, he got a job right around the corner, and I could actually walk there in like 6 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
He would not do it. He would not do it. He said, "These people are not gonna take me back to jail."
I know that's right.
He said, "No." I said, "Well, it's right around the corner." So we had two cars by then. And
Mm-hmm.
he was like, I'm not doing it. So I was glad that did it. Looking back, I was glad it happened, because that made me realize I was not going to have to go down that road again with him. You know,
Definitely.
so all that worked out for good.
Good, good. Ms. Lyric, do you have anything that you want to tell the viewers that are watching, or anything else that you wanted to share?
Well, you were asking if had any advice. My advice when it comes to like single mothers,
Mm-hmm.
that the thing I most learned my lesson on was, do not bring a man into your home when you have children, small children,
Mm-hmm.
period. If you have children and you end up single, stay single till those children are out of your house. That's the
Right.
way I feel. And I learned my lesson, like I said, with my youngest son. So I never brought anybody around after that. And
Okay.
I really had been single 7 years before I met my husband. So because men just really scared the shit out of me now. But
Mm-hmm.
that would be my advice is to younger girls, a lot of times when you are in a situation like foster care, bad, dysfunctional homes, I think that I was seeking love so badly that I accepted more than I should have. And by the time that I realized what was happening, it was too late and I couldn't get away from him. He would literally stalk us and hunt us down no matter where we went. And so
where is he now?
I have no idea. He was arrested. That last day because it was so significant. Now I didn't keep up later on. Like I said, this has been 20. It has been a long time ago. So over 15 years. So but yeah, I actually saw him one day. I had just got an office building and I come out of the lobby and I almost peed on myself. It was so traumatic for me. So I don't know why he was in the building. He was carrying like a folder or something, but he was turned, facing the window. So he didn't see me, but I saw him and I know it was him. I just the silhouette of him. I could picture it anywhere just from, you don't forget things like that. So, so the PTSD is still pretty bad because I had a really hard time after seeing him. Flashbacks, memories, things like that come back. So I know my son goes through the same thing. So,
well, that's some really good advice. Ms. Nene said, "Thank you, ladies, for talking with us." Dawn said, "Yes, you have to be cautious to say don't have a life until you get kids out of the house." I mean, listen, it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. Thank you, Tina. I agree. I think that sometimes females, especially younger females, they be thinking with their heart and not with their head. And at the end of the day, I'm even saying, like, for myself, like, it's not worth it. Like, you made a decision to have the kids, you're not with the father, cool, you can date, but nobody has a reason to be around your kids. You can have a separate life dating. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, just don't bring them home.
Right. Exactly. And when you're younger, you're more trusting when you're younger. You think that people are good in this world. There's very few good people in this world, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
I tell my daughters, I have adult daughters, but I used to tell my daughters that when they are, because the world has changed so much, I tell them, I said, you can date somebody, but don't bring them home unless you're planning on marrying them. And then if you're planning on marrying them, do a background check on them. I say, no, I tell you what, let me do a background check on them. I said, I will get to the bottom of it and find out because, they got so much game going on. These girls believe everything just by what he says, but do a background check on him and find out where he came from. Sometimes they have so many things that they're telling you that are not true that, and I listen to some of the girls on TikTok that I went overseas to date somebody. I'm like, really? I wish I was your mom.
That's scary.
I wish I would have been your mom. You wouldn't have went anywhere. It's just so much. The world has changed too much. It's scary out here now.
Oh yeah. Well, I thank both of y'all for joining us. I can definitely, y'all can't see all the comments, but I can. So they definitely enjoyed y'all being on here and sharing y'all story. Miss Lyric, I want to bring you back when I do my domestic violence series. I definitely believe that younger females have a lot, and even females our age, some of us are still, our minds are just gone, just have a lot to learn from you, especially just from the little bit of stuff that I've seen off your TikTok page. They have a lot that you can share with them to teach them. But I appreciate both of y'all. Miss C, we know you don't play. I know you're going to get to the bottom of how you got those braids.
Exactly. I'm going to figure it out.
But thank y'all so much. Let me see. I've enjoyed this live so much. Thank you both. I'm working on healing through this, but as a child of the parent who's in jail. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. And I'll be reaching back out to you, Miss Lyric. And you have a good night, Miss C.
All right. You too. All right. Thank you, girl. Right. Bye-bye.
Okay, y'all. I didn't get to really tell y'all. Thank y'all for joining me tonight on this live. I'm going to have Miss Lyric back for my domestic violence series. She definitely has a lot of information and a lot of stuff that she went through that I want her to come back and share with y'all. Those of y'all who are a part of the credit repair class, don't forget that's March the 4th at 10:30 a.m. So make sure y'all are on time, because I will not be going back over the information. I'm going to get started promptly at 10:30 a.m. And then don't forget, we have the realtor that's joining us, and we also have the mortgage banker that's joining us. If y'all did not get an invite to the private sector and you are a regular, make sure y'all send me a message so I can send y'all the link for that as well. Don't forget to hit the like button, the replay on the live. Hey, Blossom, share it if you want to. I'll be back on Thursday with another live. An inmate that, of course, was once an inmate, but he is now a firefighter with a nonprofit helping other offenders that's being released back into society to be firefighters as well. So that's a good one. That's the way we're going to end Black History Month, with a Black man making Black history. So thank y'all for joining me. I'll see y'all Thursday.